Bingo. And it says it is recording, Larry. So, good afternoon and welcome to this month's presentation of the U.S. France and Colonies Society, which is going to be on FM mail. And our speaker will be Ed Grabowski. Before he gets started, I will let you know, just in case you do not recognize all the people on here, that I am the president of the U.S. France and Colonies Group. Ed is on our board and has been and is a past president. He's been around for years and years and years. Jeff Bone.
Thanks, Ed.
Hey, we should be proud that we're still here, Ed. Jeff Bone has also been on our board for many, many, many years. Jerry Dutt and Larry Rosenblum are on our board and relatively new members. Dick Stevens is on our screens somewhere. Dick is a past president for many, many years. And I think I've got it, all the people who are at least officers. I know there are many more of you who are members of the club. So Ed has a variety of collecting interests. As many of you know, his lifelong passion was the group type, which he has now largely sold off. And today he's going to talk to us about FM overprints and the use of those stamps during the group type period, right?
That's correct.
And I am just mechanically here, what I am going to do is I am going to mute everybody, and Ed, I'll ask that you then unmute yourself so that you can talk and the background noises should all go away. So without further ado, Ed, you want to share your screen also? I've allowed you to do that.
Okay, I'm waiting to be muted. I'm unmuted.
You are.
People can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen.
And if you get the column of or a row of people's pictures that block part of the screen, you can click on the little minus sign that may be next to my picture. I don't know who's at the top of your column. And that will minimize that.
Okay. I did that, and I have to do from the beginning.
Do a slideshow.
Okay, I'm starting in a funny way today. As Ken indicated, I'm an old guy, and I've got lots of stuff I think about, and I feel like saying at times, and I decided today I'm going to say it. So we're going to take a few detours. I hope you don't mind. I'd just like to make a few comments on various things. One thing that I've felt, and I say an opinion here, one aspect of the French postal system that I've always admired is the ability of the French to come up with simple, elegant, and efficient solutions to complex postal problems. I don't think the solutions have been generally recognized by generations of philatelists. Two colonial examples that stand out, in my opinion, are the creation of the general issues in 1859 and the creation of the group type in 1892. To meet the need for postage stamps for all of its colonies in the late 1850s, France developed a set of stamps known as the Eagles, which were used throughout the French Empire. Thus, with one simple design issued in 6 values, France was able to take care of all of the stamp needs of its colonies from 1859 to 1871. A similar solution was developed in the early 1890s when the need to provide definitive issues showing the colony of origin arose, and France responded with the group type. In this case, a single design was used where numeral plugs could be used with the master die to create the initial 13 values. A second pass through the press was required to add the colonial names. As with the Eagles, the group type essentially solved all of the French colonial stamp needs from 1892 until the early part of the 20th century, when pictorial issues reflected each of the colonies began to be developed. I just thought I'd say that to make the point. I'm involved a lot with the British Empire Study Group and that, and I see how England handled things. Uh, Ken mentioned that my passion has been the group type since actually 1976. And within the group type, there are wonderful subspecialties for collecting, and I've dabbled in all of them. They're great for small exhibits, the writing of papers and lectures. There's military franchise mail, wonderful concession rate mail with lots of military date stamps. In reunion for 3 weeks in 1901, there was a shortage of low value group types and they used postage due stamps. I really bit into this one and developed the one frame exhibit, which ultimately won a grand award at a Ballpex. And then at the one frame C of C, it won the C of C. So that worked out very well. Guadeloupe had a similar problem and they chose to use prepayment and cash. I love printed matter business papers and commercial samples and have done a number of articles on those. AR letters, return receipts. Today we're going to hear about the FM stamps. There's the Madagascar numeral cancels. There's some group type bisects. There's government franchise mail. And then there's packet and packet boat mail. So you have all these wonderful sub areas to explore when you collect the group type. And today we're going to do the FM stamps during the era of the group type. I'm still getting something on my screen here. Okay, it's a little out of the way.
Everything looks pretty good to me, Ed.
Okay, so the franchise militaire stamps, the FM stamps. I want to address what are they, how are they created, when they were created, how they were used, were they abused? A key reference that I like is by someone, F. Reichenheim, the franchise military stamps of France in the London Philatelist of 1906. It's a mid-size article and gives wonderful details on the stamps, their background, the decrees. The decrees are in both French and English. The only weakness of this is there's no postal history, but it's a great start for these issues. Before we get into the issues, we've got to take a quick look at French military mail prior to the FM stamps. Occupation forces and soldiers on station received the special military concession rate of 15 centimes in lieu of the regular 25 centime over French community rate. This rate required validation by local commanders, unit cachets, manuscript endorsements, signatures, et cetera, et cetera. The forces engaged in combat received full franchise. Their mail was sent free. This also required extensive validation. And I just want to show a typical military concession rate cover sent from Papeete. Got to work in a group type cover here and there. French Oceania in 94, 15 centimes in lieu of 25. You note the Corps d'Armée Papeete, military date stamp, the unit cachet, the manuscript validation and signature are on the reverse. And there are Paris arrivals on the front and back. And I consider this one of my most beautiful covers in the group type. And you notice very nice strikes of the Corps d'Armée, the unit itself. And we even got the Paris Foreign Office arrival in a matching blue to go with the stamp. Here's a typical military franchise letter from the period from St. Marie de Madagascar. It's got the military cachet and full endorsement, transit and arrival on the back, and it's quite possibly the only recorded military franchise letter from St. Marie de Madagascar. At least I've not seen another. By the way, the happy faces are to indicate rare material. So, creation of the military franchise stamps. On January 1st, 1899, the military concession rate of 15 centimes in lieu of 25 ceased to exist because the French community rate was lowered to 15 centimes. Ordinary military mail was treated as ordinary mail at the 15 cent rate, without validation and signatures. All military mail became military franchise mail with the complex validation process. And the question remained, how might that be simplified? And the French created the military franchise stamps and a system to go with it. The 15 centime type Mouchon French community rate stamps were overprinted FM for use in the worldwide French military system. And there's an example of millesime 1 for the 1901 printing. The rules under which these stamps were used. Now, these come from the Reichenheim article and my personal observations from my own collection. Each member of the military was allowed 2 free FM stamps to send 2 free letters each month, each not exceeding the first weight level. For letters exceeding the first weight level, additional postage, and if you desired registration, that too was requested was to be prepaid with regular postage stamps. You could not use 2 military franchise stamps on a single letter. If you didn't use your stamps in a given month, the right to use them was voided and did not carry over. Use of the FM stamps generally replaced the standard validation procedures, though you occasionally see cachets and some endorsements. The stamps were considered to have no value and could be only used on French community mail. They indicated a type of mail service. And from my point of view, they were not valid to non-French destinations. The distribution and use of the stamps was handled by local quartermasters who also developed procedures for receiving them. The success of the use of the stamps depended on getting them to the soldiers on a timely basis. And I think for troops on station, not in combat, that was not a problem. For troops in combat, it probably was a problem because getting stamps was not at the top of their want lists. So the reality of the use of these stamps came out since it was not possible to provide troops engaged in combat. The FM stamps we used, those not engaged in combat but doing occupation or police duties received and used the stamps. The troops engaged in combat continued use of the old military franchise free mail system with standard validation. I've not seen that said clearly anyplace, and this is a conclusion that I reached based on all the mail that I've seen and handled. Now here's an example of a military franchise letter from 1902 from the French Indo-Chinese forces attempted to conquer territory in Siam. You notice the endorsement at the top, troops from Chantabun. Then you have a proper military endorsement, Unit Cachet, Poste de Pac Nam Siam. The letter itself entered the mails in Saigon, carried by line N of the French packet system. This is all in 1902. And by the way, the campaign failed, but I got this nice military franchise letter to New Caledonia as a destination, which is quite nice. So the stamps overprinted FM during the group type era are shown here. The concept was authorized in early 1901. The first stamps did not come out until mid-1901. The first was the 15 Mouchon, then the retouched Mouchon in April 03, the 15-cent Simuse in July 04, the 10 centime Simuse in July 1906. That was important because in June 1906, there was a change in the French community rate from 15 to 10 centimes. And this new FM stamp reflected that change. And then in 07, the workhorse 10 centime vermilion Simuse stamp came. And these are just the stamps I mentioned. You can see the redesigned Mouchon, the redesign of the shield around the 15 and moving the post up. And then the 2 older sewer types, and then the 10 centime new sewer issue in vermilion. So we're going to take a little walk through the French colonies starting in the order that I've always considered them. And it's important to note that these stamps had no monetary value and were essentially labels to indicate a type of mail service. Thus, they were used until supplies were consumed, even when newer values were available, or when the value shown on the stamp was no longer the valid French community rate. You see a lot of usage of older 15 centime stamps after the 10 centime rate was in effect. Here's what might be the earliest recorded use of an FM stamp from the French colonies. It's from French Guiana on August 2nd, 1901. I purchased this from the Alain Millet collection, and both, this is the earliest date both Alain and I have seen for use of an FM stamp from the colony. Not a particularly exciting cover. The center didn't even leave proper room for the stamp, and it had to be squeezed in at the bottom. If we move over to Guadeloupe, as I said, this is a survey. I'm not trying to be comprehensive. If we move over to Guadeloupe, we already see something new, and that is that the people who initially handled the mail within the military had Gendarmerie Guadeloupe hand stamps that they used to tie these stamps, tie the stamps to the letter. This was not required. It was just the way they preferred to treat the mail. And this one is remarkably from the tiny village of Baie-Mahault. Anything from that village is fantastic. And you combine military franchise usage with that nice Gendarmerie Guadeloupe hand stamp, and you have a really nice example of postal history. Turns out there was a second Gendarmerie Guadeloupe hand stamp, and here it is used on the 10 centime sewer on a postcard to Paris that's perfectly legitimate. This is the only example I've seen of the Gendarmerie Guadeloupe hand stamp, and I don't know much about it. Here we have improper use of two FM stamps on one letter that was not caught at the originating office of St. Claude, and so it passed through the mails. It's been my experience that the originating post office has to note deficiencies or problems in postage. If they don't, the letters generally go through as is with no problem, as happened in this case. They should have really treated this very differently, and we'll see how in a few minutes. We go over to Martinique. Here's a very common usage from Fort-de-France, the major city commercial center in Martinique. It turns out they chose to use that octagonal Correspondance des Armées Martinique stamp just as a way of identification of military mail. It wasn't required. It was just the choice of the local people handling the mail. You see a number of local choices in the handling of this mail. Here's one from a small village, February 8th, 1905, shows use of the second French Franchise Militaire stamp. Can't see it too well. But the most interesting thing about this letter is it originated in February 8th, 1905, and it was delivered in Paris August 24th, 1905. That's about 6 months later. And you look at the address and you see it's addressed to someone who's a master saddle maker, I guess, at the Barracks des Celestines on the Boulevard of Henry IV, but there's no city. And so the address is incomplete, and sorting this out took 6 months. This is the building that was the Barracks of the Celestines. Today you just Google it and put in Paris and you see this, and it's still a government building. Here's the letter up close, so you can see that indeed it is the second FM stamp. You can see the shield now that it's a little larger. Normally in a collection, people always ask you, what's your rarest piece in this collection? What's the most unusual, the most valuable? Well, here it is. a usage of an FM stamp from St. Pierre and Miquelon. St. Pierre and Miquelon had 4 post offices. The post office at St. Pierre, where everybody lived, or most everybody, and 99+% of the mail came from St. Pierre. There's the Ile-aux-Chênes across the bay. You can get some mail from the Ile-aux-Chênes. And then 2 tiny offices at Miquelon, the second island, and Langlade, where you hardly ever see any mail. Here's an FM stamp usage from the little village of Miquelon. You can see it's from the Gendarmerie of St. Pierre and Miquelon, and the sender wanted registration, so the registration is prepaid with a 25-centime group type. And this is a major rarity on all accounts. And it's the only recorded example of the use of an FM stamp from St. Pierre and Miquelon during the group type period. And if you look at it closely, you can see the Miquelon cancels on the stamps, and on the left, the transit through St. Pierre, and then the Paris Foreign Office registry arrival, and there are additional Paris hand stamps on the back. I should mention that when this cover came up, I said I'm going to tell you some stories as I go along. When this cover came up with Thierry Lalavé, I'm guessing there were 3 bidders on it, myself, JJTR, and Henk Slebink of Belgium. And we bid it up to a fierce sum, and I was the one who got it. And of course, it resold in my sale of November 19, and I was out of the bidding, and I hate to report I lost money on this on this cover. That's what happens when you pull one of the bidders out. So let's go over to the West African colonies. Senegal, you see limited and not particularly special usage. The Sudan, you see extensive usage, as there were military campaigns and occupation underway during the group type period. French Guinea and Dahomey, I have not seen use of these stamps, and the Congo and Ivory Coast, it's limited. So here's a very nice example from the Sudan, small village of French Sikasso, properly franked for a double weight registered letter, where the FM stamp covers the first 15 grams, the 15-centime group type covers up to the next 15 grams, and the 25 centimes is for the registration, and it has proper transits and back stamps on the back. So a very, very nice example of a double weight letter. Here's one just from one of the smaller villages from Kouri, and it shows local use to Bamako. Excuse me for a moment, I've got to close the door. Okay, this is from Kouri, locally used to Bamako, and you notice it's 1906. At this time, the Samu stamps were available, but this is use of the old Mouchon stamps is still in effect. The stamps were simply used until they were consumed, regardless of what was available or what the rates were. The Sudan got so big that at one point it was divided into 2 entities, the French Sudan and the Upper Senegal and Niger. And here's a letter from the Upper Senegal and Niger entity from the little village of Gambou to Morel and Prum merchants in Bamako. Again, it's 1907, shows use of the 15 centime stamp, even though the 10 centime stamps were available. With respect to the Ivory Coast, I only have this one example from a small village to Paris. And from the French Congo, just one example from a small village deep within the Congo from 1913 with use of the 10 centime sower stamp. So that brings us now to the Indian Ocean and the Indian Ocean colonies. And I should note, I don't think there was any significant military activity or presence in Obag, Djibouti, and Somali coast during this period. So I just don't see any military mail, but we do have use from Madagascar, Reunion, and French India. This is from Diego Suarez, the second FM stamp, January 1908. Now the rate is clearly 10 centimes at this point. We're still using the 15 centime stamp. And it's Diego Suarez to Bel Abbé in Algeria, which is a smaller portion or smaller village. And this is where the Foreign Legion had a lot of its activities. So it's just a nice use from Madagascar. I mentioned before that Madagascar had this subcategory of numeral cancellations. Post offices starting in 1901 new post offices were opening so fast they couldn't keep up with date stamps and whatnot. So Madagascar created a series of provisional date stamps that had numerals, and two types, the number at the top, Madagascar at the bottom, and then reversed Madagascar at the top, the number at the bottom. And this is an example of FM stamp being used from the newly opened villages. Colfra, the bulletin of Colfra has a lot of detail on these cancellations and which we used when and where, et cetera, et cetera. Dr. Desno in France has made a lifetime study of this. And this one is from one of the small villages in Madagascar. Here's one that was posted most probably on the French packet while in the port of Diego Suarez. You can see the Reunion Marseille octagonal date stamp. You see the cachet of the military. That wasn't required, but as I said, this is frequently done. And finally, from Diego Suarez, 1908, use of the 10 centime and the sender wanted registration. So you pick up the Madagascar 25 centime group type along with the FM stamp to properly bring this into France. We come to Reunion. I haven't seen much FM mail from Reunion. In fact, I've only seen two covers. This is the one I got, which is from the principal city, Saint-Denis, principal commercial center in Reunion. There was another one from the village of Sainte-Anne that Lalave sold a while back, and I duked it out with Peter Kelly on that one, and I lost the battle, so I have to show you the one from Saint-Denis. Here's one that I think this is probably one of my favorite covers, just covers from the French India settlements. You may remember there were 5 French India settlements: Chandernagore, Yannan, Pondicherry, and Caracal on the East Coast, with Pondicherry being the main town from which most of the mail emanates. And then on the West Coast, Maha. This is use of Franchise Militaire stamp from the little village of Caracal. And the nice thing about Caracal is it had this boxed IND cancel. This was used from the 1890s to about 1908 or 1909. I had about 17 or 18 group type covers, plus this one, showing use of that IND cancel. I just loved it. No other colony, no other village had such a spectacular cancel. This is a local letter going to a member of the Indian forces in Pondicherry. What's their name? Spink did an interesting thing when they sold this. They put all of the Caracal boxed India cancel covers together in one lot and sold them as a unit. I can't tell you who bought them, but the person who bought them is keeping them for his grandchildren. So interesting aside. And now we come to Indochina, which is the most complex colony. I did see Jack Dykhouse is here, and he's going to keep me honest on this stuff. Why is it the most complex? Well, we have the five regions of Indochina: Cochin China, which was under military occupation; Annam, which was occupation; Tonkin, which was occupation and active combat; and then Cambodia and Laos, which was active combat. And then on top of that, you had the French offices in China, where you both have occupation and combat, depending on which office and the time. So here's an example from Cochin China to just pick one. Ron Bentley has a wonderful collection of these that's on the website of the Society of Indochina Philatelist. This is one from Sok Trang. You can see the cachet that was put on it for the unit there. And someone attempted to use one of his FM stamps on a postcard to Switzerland, and that was not proper. That's an improper usage. Somebody caught it ahead of the time, probably the local quartermaster, and so they put on the 10 centime group type to pay the postage for this. The FM stamp just becomes a souvenir that travels along, and despite this confusion, it did make it through the mail. So you can see it's got the Swiss arrival, indicating that these are not proper for foreign destinations. Go over to Annam. You can find examples from nice small villages, such as Bang Hoi. You go to Tonkin, and you'll find even more examples from small villages. You see Hongay, and then the village of Yetri, 1906. 1906, again, clearly it's November, so the 10 centime rate is in effect, but the 15 centime stamp is being used without issue. This is the village of Kaobang now, and somebody had a second weight level letter. You see the FM stamp for the first weight level and a combination of Grasset and group type, prepaying the 15 centime for the second weight level. So that's how it should have been done. Here's another example of somebody who tried to use both FM stamps on a double weight letter from the village of Langsung and Tonkin. And this was caught by the post office. They canceled the stamps and then struck the envelope with a T in triangle for postage due. And on arrival in France, they processed it and they looked at it and said, what's the issue? The issue is there's an invalid FM stamp. This letter is actually 15 centimes short of regular postage, so it's charged 30 centimes due. It's actually quite rare to find one of these with everything proper. The only thing that could make it better was if the 30 centime stamp was the orange shade, and that would really be exciting. Cambodia and Laos. I don't have anything to show you from Cambodia and Laos. I will note that the Cambodia and Laos collection of Steve Chazen, who was the CEO of Occidental Petroleum in his day, had lots of money, was just sold by the Cherrystone Auction Company here in Jersey in May. And he had a number of exceptional Cambodia and Laos military pieces that were sold, but no uses of the FM stamps from either Cambodia or Laos. I've not seen any during the group type period. So I don't believe any exist. At least I don't have any information, so I have nothing to show here. So let's go over to the Chinese offices now, and Guangzhou Wan in China. This is French territory, ultimately administered by Indochina. At the left, you see the map of Indochina, and you see the blue arrow and that little red dot. That's Guangzhou Wan. In fact, the little red dot is too big. Guangzhou Wan should be much smaller than that. In 1900, the French decided they wanted their equivalent of Hong Kong. Okay, the British had Hong Kong as a major port of entry for commerce, major port of entry for military activities, and a major place to be in China. The French wanted something similar, so they invaded the area of Guangzhou Wan. There was a short campaign and then military occupation. the city of Guangzhou became Fort Bayard. You can see within the territory, there are a number of small villages. And use of the Franchise Militaire stamps is quite rare from Guangzhou. I had two from Fort Bayard. One, you note the date stamp shows Fort Bayard Xin, shows China there, just local use to Haiphong. That's quite rare. And then they redid the date stamp and it became Fort Bayard Indochina, indicating that Indochina was responsible for administrating this area. And again, you should note that this is now 1910 and they're still using the 15 centime FM stamp, okay? Even though it's been was superseded a long time ago. They're still using these stamps. They're still available for this type of mail service. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break here and tell you another story. Maybe something a little different. In November of 19, I sold the group type collection, which was about 2,700 covers via Spink. They prepared 3 wonderful catalogs for 3 sessions over 2 days with about 1,500 lots. The most surprising lot in the sale was a military franchise cover from Guangzhou. I purchased this cover from David Wrigley in 2003 for $3,500. And over the years, I really wondered about, maybe I really overpaid for this cover. Maybe I shouldn't have done it. You look at the cover and it's got at the top the Expeditionary Forces in Guangzhou, which is fine. It's got lower left the cachet of the unit. It's a very poor strike. You can see Che Kang, Commander, Commandant des Armées. And then the date stamp for the little village of Che Kang, Indochine Française, 4th of May, 1900. And it's to France and somebody's marked it rare. So there it stood. I paid this, what I thought, exorbitant sum, and Spink put it up. And this cover realized 26,000 euros in the sale, the most expensive lot and greatest depreciation in value I've ever seen for any cover I had. I don't know to this day why it brought so much, but I'm very happy about it. And finally, the last one from China proper, from Chongqing, February 1904, use of the 10 centime stamp cachet to Paris. Nice, proper, and rare usage. And unfortunately, this cover makes me very, very sad. And it's funny how things happen. When I was putting together this slide program, I took a look for the first time at the addressee. And many of you know I'm collecting philately and international mail order fraud these days. I have 4 fraudsters and I collect mail to them in the United States. And there was one organization called the New York Institute of Science in Rochester. Maybe some of you heard my June lecture for the Collectors Club on that. And one of the sub-frauds of the New York Institute of Science was someone named G.A. Mann, who developed a concept and a fraud scam called radiopathy. And when I was getting ready for this lecture, I looked at this cover and I said, that's G.A. Mann. That's the fraud man of the New York Institute of Science. I bet that's true. And so I said, well, I can't believe it's going to be the same name of 2 different people. So you check the addressee, and it's the International Library for New Thought on Rue de Louvre in Paris. And so I started Googling this library and Mann, and sure enough, in 1914, Mann was in Paris and they were publishing a book by him. So I've sold via Spink one of my best fraud covers, and I have no idea what happened to it. So it goes. New Caledonia is a wonderful place from which to collect military mail. There was a good military presence, both concession rate and the FM stamps. This is just an example from a small village, but very pleasant example showing the cachet of the unit. And this cover comes from the Alain Millet collection. I did not own this cover. It's Alain's, and you see it's a combination of the FM stamp and a 10 centime group type stamp to the Napa Valley in the United States. And I maintain that this is illegal usage of the FM stamp, and that the postal clerk handling this in Noumea should have recognized that and struck this with a T in triangle, so it came due to the United States, and it would have been due 30 centimes or 6 cents from the addressee. Alain maintains that he feels this is proper use to make the 25 centime rate. So we disagree on that, but regardless, it is a cover with an FM stamp and a 10 centime stamp that made it unscathed to the Napa Valley, the wine area in the United States. And finally, not finally, another aspect of New Caledonia that's really, really nice is New Caledonia was responsible for the administration of the colony of New Hebrides. And you see use of group type stamps from New Caledonia from the New Hebrides. They're quite fun to collect. I had about 15 examples. And this is an example of use of the Franchise Militaire stamp from Port Vila, New Hebrides, January 7th, 1904. That's a correction of the date in the date stamp. You will notice it is 1904. This also is from the Alain Millet collection, but I bought it from Alain, so it's my collection. And as far as we know, it's the earliest recorded use of an FM stamp from the New Hebrides. There was a contingent of about 20 soldiers, I believe, in the New Hebrides. There are only 3 known FM covers from the New Hebrides, and I had all 3. This is the second one showing late use of the 15 centime stamp on an envelope with a photo. There is a cachet on here, but I cannot read what the unit is at this time. I don't believe that photo is of French forces, because I don't think there were that many French forces in the Pacific area around this time. Possibly somebody in the audience could identify those forces for me. And the last one is on a postcard, but again with the 15 centime stamp, postcard to Paris. And so those are the 3 known usages of the French Franchise Militaire stamps from the New Hebrides, all in one collection. And then finally, we come to Papeete, Tahiti, 1903. I've only seen 2 examples of the use of these stamps from Papeete, and this is the nicer one. It's just basically a simple usage. So that's my walk through the use of the FM stamps, and the conclusions, my own conclusions, and those I've picked up along the way are the FM stamps were used only by troops on station and not those engaged in combat. The regular military franchise system continued for those troops engaged in combat. They did require authorization for free mail. Although the stamps were to remove the need for standard endorsements and cachets for military mail, such continue to a small degree at the convenience or desire of the local people handling the mail. Not all military postmasters were completely familiar with the rules governing the use of these stamps, and errors occurred, like 2 stamps or used to foreign destinations. The stamps used were as available and not according to the most current or those corresponding to the current French community rate. It is very common to see 15 centime stamps used when the French community rate dropped to 10 centimes. How difficult has this assembly been? Well, I had about 50 covers in this area, and it took me about 30 years to put those 50 covers together. And I want to cite a second key reference by somebody named Grabowski. the era of the French Colonial Group Type, use of the Franchise Militaire stamps from the colonies. I published a full chapter on this in the European Academy of Philately, Opus 15 annual, detailing new details on the stamps, and finally adding a large amount of postal history in support of conclusions and to illustrate what was going on. I'd like to finish, uh, Ken was giving me the razz about being an old guy. Yep, I'm an old guy, and I had a lot of old friends. And I was asked a couple of weeks ago to write an obituary for the FCP for John Livesey, who was a good friend and good advisor to me. And I did that, and I wanted to include a picture of John along with the obit that Ras would publish. And I couldn't find a good picture of John alone. So I dug this out of the FCP from 1981, actually, showing five members of the society, five renowned members of the society who were at our booth at the ASDA show. And I just thought I'd remember John this way and mention the other fellows too. The first one on the upper left is George Guzio, who was a renowned topical collector. He had marvelous collections of penguins, Mozart, and Wagner. And he was also a marvelous teacher of how to exhibit. Then, of course, there's John Livesey in the middle, who we're remembering right now. John was former president of the FCP as continuous board member, a plater of the 25 centime series of 1871, which he brought to a large gold in Tokyo, a national and international judge, commissioner, and an expert for the European group of expert with that group. Then at the bottom, we have Bob Stone, who's our editor for more than 20 years. Without Ras, it's a long-term job. And Bob was also winner of the Collectors Club Liechtenstein Award. And the last one at the lower right is Ira Zweifach, who was New York City program chair and banquet chair for 30 years and never missed a meeting. I'm sad to report, yes, all have left this world, with John being the most recent. And as I said, I just like to take this time to remember him. And that's all. I'd be happy to hear comments and take questions. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Ed. And before we take that picture off the screen, I want to tell those of you who are not in the US here, for many years, there was a TV show when cable first came about 30 years ago that was a style show, and it reported on the latest fashions and so on. And the opening credits had people walking down the street in New York City, and one of them, who was caught on camera and turned and looked at it and said, "What's going on here?" or something like that, was George Guzio. So he was behind those credits for as many years as that show was on TV. All right. Questions from the audience?
Can we get rid of my presentation?
Let's see, I can stop participant sharing.
There we go. Okay, I can see people now. You've got everybody muted.
Right, so when you want to speak, just unmute yourself, and we'll let you go ahead and ask questions.
On the one cover that you and Alain have a little difference of opinion on, where he believes that the 15 centime made that correct rate. Why would that be? Why would he have that opinion when, as you were explaining, that the FM on the stamp was almost merely a label directing what service it was versus the actual value underneath it?
Well, we didn't discuss it in any detail. I figured, okay, he has his opinion, I have my opinion, and so they stand, and people can hear both, and they can think, how they want to view the situation.
If Alain chooses to express his opinion, he is on our Zoom meeting here.
Is he? Alain?
He is.
Are you there?
He's muted at the moment.
Yes, speaking.
There he is.
So is that New Caledonia FM cover? Is that 15 centime stamp valid for postage, or did the New Caledonia postal clerk make a mistake when he didn't note it
It's
as
my opinion.
unpaid?
It's my opinion, but I know it's not yours.
I know. So you know, you guys want us to duke it out here on Zoom, the first battle on Zoom.
Why
We want answers. We want answers.
why it would be correct for overweight and for registered covers and not for foreign mail?
But you see the one to Switzerland where they put the extra 10 centime stamp on.
No, it's
And-
FM. It's for the first level of weight,
Well,
and just they just had the difference. It's not. It's a question of money. That's all.
all right. I'm gonna.
We didn't find. I never find any official paper about that.
Yeah, I think it
But
might be
the use.
it might be mentioned in the Reichenheim article, but I haven't been able to find it.
But okay, we have to discover a paper stating officially it's permitted, but I didn't find it.
Well,
That's a problem.
okay, Jared, that's where it stands.
Some things will remain a mystery.
To be uncovered later.
Yeah,
Got to leave some work for you younger guys.
I'll let you know if I find something new. I will let you know if I do
Okay,
find.
we'll publish it in the France and Colonies Philatelist.
Yes. More questions?
I have a question. When the rate was lowered from 15 to 10 and they used the 15 stamp, did they actually pay 15 for it or did they pay 10
There was
for
no
it?
payment. They got 2 free stamps every month.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
No money exchanged hands for these stamps. They got 2, they used 2. If they didn't take their 2, they got none.
Was there accounting between the military and the post office?
No, there was just an accounting with the military. The local quartermasters were responsible for keeping tabs of who got what stamps when, you know, how many and whatnot. They wanted to be sure no one was cheating and getting more stamps than they should get.
Yes, but I think the question is whether after the army has to refund the post office for that or they pay for the stamps.
Okay, they had to do that?
It's a question. It's just a question.
Okay. I haven't seen anything with respect to that.
Because you could imagine that the post administration they would be how would they be refunded for this, or would they not?
Was the post office refunded for unpaid Franchise Militaire mail?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
And like it's similar. I mean, could they pay? I mean, maybe the army was paying for the full set of stamps for the sheets, and after so it was paid on the army budget to carry the military mail in a way. But I don't know. Alain, do you know?
But that should be documented somewhere in a journal officiel. I mean, there must have been somewhere between the postal service that had those stamps with a 15-cent value on them that were then used without proper payment. Somebody between the soldier who used it and the postal service must have accounted for this. Either it was just a simple note between the
paper
military service
accounting.
and the postal service, but somebody needed to keep track of that. That's impossible that the French postal service would have let those stamps, just be given away.
Another mystery.
No, we have to find the right papers.
Yeah, we're gonna have to dig into the literature.
So Ed, you said that the stamps were invalid at the end of the month after they were handed out.
No, no,
But
no,
there was
no,
no,
no. You got your 2 stamps and you used them when you wanted. Okay, if you didn't use them, then they became then you didn't get them. There was, you know, you weren't entitled to those 2 stamps at some point. You had to take them that month.
but how did they control them actually being used? Were the stamps only given to the soldiers?
I don't know if they were using them, you know, at the desk of the guy handling them, or they actually gave them out physically. You know, I don't know what was happening at the local military level.
Okay,
Certainly, the quartermaster kept the documentation as to who got how many stamps when.
Did ordinary, I'm sorry, did ordinary soldiers in the French Foreign Legion, were they given these stamps too?
They probably, yes. Okay, I haven't seen any, and at times it's a little confusing as to who did use them and who did not use them. Where you would think there were people who might use them, yet you don't see it. I haven't particularly looked for anything from any place other than the colonies.
Were there any examples that you know of forged FM stamps used on cover?
Wow, not as far as I know. I don't know. I don't even know if there was any knowledge of forged FM stamps.
Oh, really?
Does anybody know about that? I mean, I certainly haven't seen one, but I haven't collected unused stamps.
Thank you.
Jerome speaking. Ed, I wonder whether your postcard or your cover, sorry, from New Hebrides was not the standard service à la mer, Marine Nationale, the hand stamp that is faint and.
I don't know.
No?
I tried to enhance that with the image enhancing program, and I could not bring it up to read.
No, but that seems logical, Jerome. That's the Marine Française Service à la Mer.
Yeah.
Yes, it seems to be that one.
That's a standard. Did anybody recognize who the soldiers were?
No.
I mean, that'd be a lot of soldiers for New Caledonia and Oceania. Did the uniforms look French?
No.
Any thought?
They look like uniforms, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Definitely colonial, but after that, I mean, no, I don't know.
To me, they looked Indian, but
I don't think they look French.
Not French Indian.
No.
No. I think that may well have been a British envelope. It's the New Hebrides, so there were British and French around.
Yes, on the envelope. On the envelope on the right side, on the bottom, it's mentioned on parade.
Parade,
Yeah.
yes, it's in English.
Yes.
Ed, I have a copy of Gethin's Fakes and Forgeries. There are 6 pages of forged FM overprints, 11 different stamps that are forged, including many that are used and obviously went through the post.
Does he have any covers?
No covers are illustrated,
Okay.
but I can make copies of these pages and
No,
send them to you.
I have his book. I actually knew him reasonably well when he was putting together. Actually, when he put together that book and was selling it, and I have a copy here, which I will try and dig out as a result of what you've just said.
Okay,
Of course, the cancellations could be forged as well.
well, that's definitely true, yes.
But were they forgeries for the soldiers or for the philatelists?
Let me see if he says.
Because it's a different story.
Yes.
Probably after the fact for the philatelists, because I don't see why a soldier would have bought a 15-cent stamp just to kind of, fake an FM on it and then use it for postage.
Especially when the 15 was actually
Was more expensive than the 10 cents or the.
Actually, we should check the Fournier album too to see if Fournier had anything to do with these.
Yes. Says the FM overprint varieties are the only 20th century French overprints to have been forged by Fournier.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then the cancellations are probably forged too. Fournier had a lot of colonial cancels that he made up, or not Fournier, but the Hirschberg and the firm.
Yeah, he doesn't say specifically, but I think from just glancing at it that a lot of these were philatelic creations rather than for actual use on an envelope by the military.
Well, I've always had the feeling one of the differences between the French and the British, the French were very casual about postal forgeries, and they didn't seem to take a lot of security measures, and they don't seem to have had a lot of problems. And the British were paranoid about it.
Yeah.
I mean, they did all sorts of things to prevent postal forgeries. And I think they spent 1,000 times what the postal forgeries would have cost. So, but they did all sorts of things, starting with watermarks and initials and all sorts of things. So, I mean, when we get certain French forgeries, I guess they're the Bordeaux type and the Ceres type. If you get them on cover, that's a rarity. You really like to add that to a collection. Anything else?
No, maybe I just wanted to add, I think that the French government back then had made that possible for the soldiers because they wanted to encourage them to write to their families, on a regular basis. And that might explain why, you couldn't, accumulate your 2 stamps from month to month. It was meant for you to write on a regular basis. So let's say once a month to your family, and then the next month you would do this again.
I think I actually read that someplace, but the fact is, if you looked at the letters I had, a lot of them were to banks and commercial.
Yes, that's true as well, which makes little sense. I agree.
So it didn't quite work out, but at least the soldiers got their free letters.
Yeah. They could order stuff from Parisian merchants.
Yes, were they merchants looking for collecting those stamps? I mean, new, never used by the soldiers. I mean, were they how eventually when were the not in the new stamps not used coming to the hands of the philatelists because they were finally resold by the soldiers?
I don't know how they made it to the philatelic market. I mean, you millisemes, for example, have a reasonable availability. So that suggests that dealers or collectors had some access to these stamps. I mean, that milliseme that I showed wasn't mine. I pulled that off of eBay, and that was one of the nicest ones I've seen. And they're available. I'm not sure I've seen panes or large blocks, but I haven't looked that much. I don't know that anybody has studied plate varieties in those overprints either.
All right. Ed, that was wonderful and obviously encouraged a great deal of discussion. So thanks to everybody for joining us today. And I especially appreciate those of you in Europe who have joined us. We moved the time especially to encourage your attendance, making it a little less convenient for some of us in the United States. But if you continue to join us, we'll continue to do this on Sunday evening for you and Sunday afternoon for us. I am going to stop the recording at this point.